Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "Make me work 6 jobs at once and not pay me? See ya later." This happened 2 years ago. I was 20 and a recent university dropout. I needed a year to empty my head, recover from imminent burnout, and make some money to help support my single mum and my younger sister, who'd just given birth with no father in the picture. I was a very insecure person at the time. I really wanted to work, but without a degree, life sucks, until I got contacted by Mr. B. Mr. B found me on a federal website for job applicants, where I was registered. He was looking for a manager to help manage his small hotel, a beautiful establishment with 6 lofts located in the heart of a medieval city, my city. I answered him immediately, saying that I had no prior experience with management and that my qualifications didn't exactly lie in that area, but thank you very much for the consideration. He answered back, saying, "Just come take a look and we'll talk about it." The first thing I did was Google Mr. B. He had an architectural firm and was coaching a professional soccer club, which is kind of a big deal in my little country. Secondly, I Googled the hotel. It was indeed really small and fairly new, an old underground mill transformed into 6 luxury lofts, but with the medieval style and feel kept intact. I decided I had nothing to lose by simply visiting and hearing him out. I was extremely curious, too. Why me? Well, you can probably guess, but I couldn't. I was naive, terribly insecure and in desperate need of a job, to prove to myself and to the world that I hadn't taken a gap year for anything. Long story short, I met with Mr. B that same week. He was a short, businesslike, fairly handsome man, friendly enough, didn't sweat the little things, showed me around and explained to me what he expected. It was a slow season, so I'd have some time to learn the ropes. Before I knew it, I was employed. Mr. B made me 3 promises, a salary between €1,400 and €3,000 that would increase depending on the hotel's my performance. A job as a manager and receptionist, since the place was small enough to combine the two. My own room in the hotel, so I wouldn't have to commute daily. The work started immediately. I was designing stickers to put on the doors, translating letters in German, French, and English. Working with the booking software, making schedules for weeks to come. It was a rush, like nothing I'd ever done, and I was loving the experience. Finally, adult life, responsibility, a way to prove my worth. As business started to pick up and all lofts were open for rent, I was soon working from 6 in the morning till 10 in the evening, doing administration until it was time for check-in. Then checking people in, communicating with clients and suppliers, checking people out again, preparing rooms for the next visit. Grocery shopping at the market nearby and preparing breakfast for clients, etc. I also had an old work phone that I couldn't turn off under any circumstance. If clients called, I had to be accessible. Phase 1. Realization. Soon inconsistencies started to rear their ugly heads. 1. There was only one cleaning lady for the whole hotel. She had a second job at another, bigger hotel, so I could never be certain if she'd be available. I realized I'd have to jump in to help with the cleaning. I hadn't been informed of that. I pressed my boss about this and he gave me the name of some African girl who cleaned his house sometimes. Off the books. 2. Only then did I realize that I hadn't signed a single piece of paper. He said he'd fix that as soon as possible. I didn't push my luck since I was a new recruit and very eager to please. 3. The room he promised me, where I would be living, turned out to function as an office, supply room, washing room. In other words, the cleaning supplies were stashed there, as well as the washing machine, the keys and documents for all the lofts, etc. I would be living at work, literally. Also, there was no bed. I was to sleep on the floor. 4. Mr. B had disappeared from the face of the earth. Or, well, he acted as he had. He lived in a luxury apartment only 5 minutes from the hotel, but he didn't like to be contacted about all the little things. 5. I soon figured out there had been a reason some of the lofts only became accessible once I moved in as a manager. They weren't finished. Some bathrooms needed extra insulation, one of the faucets made a horrible noise, locks needed fixing, cables and insulation were visible in some spots. Wood clippings were raining down from some of the beams. I would later discover there were wood bugs in the beams, something he hadn't informed me about and that he'd left untreated for months. Guess how I found out? 6. Mr. B started to ask little favors. Like, could my mum fix some curtains for his daughter's bedroom, or couldn't my uncle help with the repairs in lofts 2, 3 and 4, all of it for a little price, if you catch my drift. I was the manager after all. I was supposed to fix that stuff. And if my family could do it for cheap. 7. At the same time, he managed my budget. This is understandable of course, but let me elaborate. Managing a hotel costs money. The only money he gave me was on a credit card that was constantly empty. Be that as it may, I did the best I could, saving money by doing most of the washing and ironing myself. The laundry service he'd hired was extremely unreliable, but he didn't want to change because it was cheap. Being frugal with the food, every room had luxury coffee machines. They were free to use and the coffee cost me a fortune. Not making expensive phone calls, etc. I handled huge amounts of money coming in. Most of the guests were rich people, but wasn't allowed to go to the bank and put more money on the hotel's credit card. Once we needed an extra mattress because more clients would be coming in than anticipated and they all wanted to stay in our biggest loft. I had already begged him for an extra foldable bed. The one he told me to use was so cheap it bent sideways if you put weight on it, so he reluctantly, after much begging, supplied me with a new one. I drove all over the province on my day off, hunting for the best, cheapest mattress. I found an incredible one, bought it with my own money, and informed my boss of the cost. I received a very angry email, basically telling me I better watch what I spend. 8. As I became a more capable manager, Mr. B became more demanding. I have a friend with severe schizophrenia that I visit in prison from time to time. You might know how harrowing a process it is to visit someone in prison. I had planned my visit meticulously to make sure I'd be back in time to relieve my sister who, with her little baby of a few months, was holding the fort for me, managing check-ins and phone calls. When I entered the waiting room, I had to turn off my work phone. This was no big deal, seeing as the fixed phone at work would always ring first and my sister was there to pick it up. When I exited the prison and jumped into my car to rush back to work, I had a few missed calls from my boss. I rang back, only to be cussed out for not picking up my phone. I hadn't been at the hotel, either. I told him my sis was there in my stead. He said he didn't want to talk to my sister, he wanted to talk to me. Insert berating tone, short, angry sentences and a whole lot of guilt tripping. 9. Furthermore, since the card was so often empty but rooms needed to be cleaned every day by a group of off-the-books cleaning ladies that I'd rounded up left and right since I had no other choice, I was forced to pay these ladies out of my own pocket, which left me broke half the time. 10. Aside from hotel-related phone calls, Mr. B had started to connect some of his personal calls to my phone as well. Namely, the ones he didn't want to deal with himself, aka disgruntled companies asking for undue payments, creditors asking for his phone number and address, etc. As he was my boss, I didn't give these people his information. Occasionally, I got a call from a fancy-pansy company in France, telling me it was time for Mr. B's biannual ordering of luxury wines. 11. The money didn't come. My money, that is. My salary. My bread and butter. 12. Lots more. Phase 2. Determination. Finally, I realized I needed to get out of this situation. Or rather, I'd known for a long time, but I had hoped things would settle, he'd give me my contract and I could start making demands. So I made plans. 1. The Turkish cleaning lady. Since this woman had been at the hotel from the very beginning and was way more experienced than I was, she didn't like me at first, understandable, I was a stupid youngling but still technically her boss. However, all it took was a few questions about her kids and a whole lot of admiration, not fake, for her cleaning skills, and she opened up to me like a floodgate. I paid her more than Mr. B had told me to pay her, out of my own pocket, because she really was the most reliable person I worked with and she could clean a loft like nothing I'd ever seen. She taught me a lot. Soon she was loyal to me instead of him. And once that happened, the little secrets started coming. 2. My Turkish cleaning lady told me about the girls who'd worked at the hotel before me, all young, non-white and inexperienced, just like me. They'd all quit within the span of a month. There were 6 of them. I was the only one who had stuck around, probably because I lived with my mum so I wasn't dependent on my salary to survive. I soon got hold of one of them. I visited her and did a cross-examination. She told me about Mr. B's treatment, his refusal to make the job official and how he still owed her quite a bit of money. This was useful information because I now knew for sure that this guy wouldn't give me my contract, ever. I still had hope because he'd found me through a federal channel, which at the time I took to mean that he wanted to do things the right way. Fallacy. 3. I had my family behind me. At this point, my uncle had done lots of big repairs, insulation, plumbing, fixing furniture, etc. My mum had worked on most of the curtains and some of the floorings. My sister was pulling free shifts to help me carry the enormous workload that no person in their right mind would give to a single employee. Thing is, my family had only been keeping their mouths shut because they love me and want to support me. I was a bookish, introverted, insecure, eager to please, little girl. My mum is a criminologist who works with very scary people on a daily basis. She knows a crook when she sees one. My uncle is the most brutally honest, short-tempered, intimidating repairman you've ever seen. He loves me, but he hates entitled little idiots who call themselves businessmen. My mum's calm and collected powers of logic combined with my uncle's brash ruthlessness was a death trap waiting to happen. But that wasn't all. Let me tell you a little something about my sister. She's fierce. In high school, she was a super popular bombshell who got thrown out of 2 different schools for bad behavior and whom I witnessed cussing out a police officer on more than one occasion. Ooh, that kind of delinquent. All of that changed when she got pregnant. She cleaned up her act in a spectacular way and is now working as a human rights advocate. She's also one of the best mothers I've ever seen. In any case, back then, when the mother things had only just started, she redirected her efforts towards her family. I guess she felt guilty for messing up my life for so long. I developed OCD because she used to stress me out so much. I'm fully cured now, though. She was helping me at the hotel because she knew I needed her in case things got bad. 4. Lastly, there was the thing that made me angry. I'd been experiencing some difficulty with the administration of the hotel, mostly booking related. When I went digging through emails and online payments, I noticed inconsistencies and eventually concluded that Mr. B was messing with my crap. He was cancelling services and contacting people behind my back, without telling me anything, leaving me to desperately search for bugs and fix last-minute bookings. That's when I snapped. Phase 3, Revenge. Finally I convinced the Turkish cleaning lady, as well as all the other cleaning ladies, to stop working at the hotel. The Turkish lady had better prospects anyway, but she hadn't been sure about leaving. I asked her to keep it a secret. I would inform Mr. B I contacted the creditors who'd been bugging me for months, as well as the companies who were still waiting for their money, and gave them Mr. B's phone number and home address. Because, you know, business is business. I wrote a very honest review of the hotel on one of the major booking sites, telling everyone all about those giant bugs in the ceiling. I basically told my family they could be themselves now. I was quitting the hotel anyway. So my mum sent the bill, my uncle made his phone calls, and my sister, well, I made sure the hotel was fully booked for the upcoming month. Every year my city holds this huge street festival that people from all over Europe flock to, so that wasn't too difficult. I sent Mr. B an email saying I was quitting on Sunday. I was valiant enough to finish my work for the week. Oh, and the cleaning ladies would be quitting, too. I gave the work phone to my sister, reclined in my seat and listened to the beautiful conversation that unfolded when Mr. B called. My sister didn't disappoint. She spared no expense. I thought about reporting his shady antics to the police but decided against it, for my own sake, as well as the cleaning ladies. I did report him to the Federal Service for Employment and told them he was using their site to lure people into undeclared work against their will. The person I spoke to made sure our conversation was confidential. So no further legal action for me. I was satisfied with the knowledge that on Monday morning, Mr. B would have to drop everything and rush to the hotel to serve his snotty guests, prepare breakfast, struggle with his faulty administration, receive complaints from cuckoo clients, write crappy emails to his angry suppliers, do the washing, the ironing, the cooking, and the cleaning, and all the other stuff I had been doing for months, unpaid and underappreciated. Thanks for making me 1,000 times stronger, jackass. I regret nothing. The hotel is no longer in business. Whoops. The next one is titled, Be Honest or Be Pissed. I've been a real estate broker in Chicago for nearly 20 years. I started at a very small independent brokerage. It was my first week there when the broker owner gave me a lead. He was older and wasn't in very good health, so he passed a lot of his leads to his agents. One of the broker's friends passed away and the friend's son wanted to sell the house. I call the son, who tells me he's known the broker for 30 plus years and how close their families were. He seems like a really nice guy. I go over and check out the house. I work up a gorgeous comparative market analysis. I have other brokers check my numbers. I was new and wanted to do a perfect job for my new client. I rehearse my presentation, have my stuff professionally printed, prepare for any possible questions, have responses ready for objections, and I head out. I dazzle this guy with my presentation. He likes the $135,000 list price I recommended. He's fine with the commission. He has no objections, but he asks me to give him 2 months to clean out the house, give his siblings a chance to go through everything and then repaint. Now, I know how to handle this, but at the time, I just said I'd call him in 2 months to get it listed. Bad move, but I trusted him because he and deceased father were so close with my broker. I didn't expect what would come next. 3 days later, I'm driving through town and I see a "for sale by owner" sign in the yard. That's when I realized that I wasted several hours doing work for him and he completely bluffed me and used me. I didn't call him back then. Nowadays, I wouldn't either, but that's only because I'd have the listing before he had a chance to put that FSBO sign in the yard. Experience counts for a lot. Anyway, my broker was at City Hall about 5 to 6 weeks later paying for transfer stamps when he just happened to notice in the registry that the previous customer was the son. The son had just paid for transfer stamps earlier, which essentially meant that the house had sold. I waited until the prescribed 2 months and called the son for my revenge. I played stupid and the conversation went something like this. Me: "Hey Len, it's Myzeri over at ABC Realty. I figured I'd give you a call to see if you got the house cleaned out and repainted because I had a relocation company call me with info from a doctor looking to move to the area. When I talked to the guy, I thought about your house and mentioned it to him. Since it's only 2 blocks from the hospital where he's going to be working and I told him how nice it was, he basically told me to make you an offer sight unseen. I couldn't remember what I said the house was worth, but I told him $215,000. He couldn't believe how inexpensive it was, but he's living in New York. He said your house sounds like it's 3 times the size of his and half the price of what he'd pay in New York City. So, I don't remember what I told you it was worth, but he's all cash and wants to be able to move in 3 weeks, so, would $215,000 work for you because I can write it up, fax it over to him for signatures, and get you done?" There was a long silence before he exploded. "Len, you fucking **** hole. You told me it was worth $135,000. Me: "Well, we didn't even list yet and it looks like I just got you $80,000 more. What are you all upset about?" "Len, I just sold that fucking house. I sold it for $130,000 because you ****king told me that was what I should expect to get." Me: "Oh damn, you sold it? That's good for you and good to know that my estimate on the sale price was spot on. Well, no problem, I'm sure I can find something else for my buyer." Len: ****ck your buyer. I want $80,000. Me: "I don't know where you're going with this. You sold your house for a price you were happy with. I just happened to get an out-of-towner on a fluke who was willing to pay more. But hey, you sold it and you got fair market value, so you did great." Len: ****ck you prick. I want that $80,000. Me: "I've never heard of this before, but if you can get the house back, I can talk to my buyer and see if he'll wait for you to close again. I don't know if that's even a possibility." Len: "No. You're going to pay me $80,000. Me: "Well, that's not going to happen. I can just hire a professional appraiser to show that you got market value for the house. My mistake was quoting my buyer the wrong price, not you." Len: "You can expect to hear from my attorney." Me: "That's fine. But I'm going to have to let you go now, Len. I've got to get over to your old house to see if the new owners would be willing to give me a copy of their appraisal and see if they might want to sell it for a quick profit. Do you know if they moved in already?" Len: "Idiot." And that's when he slammed the phone down. I would never do this now, even though I have plenty of people who waste my time. It comes with the job and getting upset doesn't make it better. However, I still think about that call today, and while part of me feels like a jerk, I still get a little smile thinking about him kicking himself for screwing me over. Here's a little more to the story. Something I do to drum up business is offer help finding tax comparables for people so they can try to get a tax reduction from the county. I actually went to meet the new owners of that house and offered to help them dispute their taxes free of charge. They were actually a really nice couple and they ended up using me to sell that house 8 years later, just before the market crash. So, they'd done some really nice stuff to the house, had a top-notch price, and they ended up getting $345,000 for it. They were doing a back-to-back closing, sell one and buy the new one on the same day. The house they were buying burned down, but they still sold theirs and moved in with relatives while they looked for something new. The market literally crashed 2 months later while they were living with the wife's grandparents. They stayed there for 2 more years and then I helped them buy a huge 4,000 square foot foreclosure for $130,000, new construction that hadn't been completed. Just needed trim, a garage, some light fixtures, and a kitchen which they were happy to install on their own considering the price and location. It's currently worth about $550,000 since that area is just booming again. They've been very happy with me and have sent me a few referrals. As a side note, I told them about Len, a very watered-down version that didn't make me look like a dick, and they happily gave me a copy of their appraisal just in case he decided to call a lawyer. They said he was a jerk to deal with and got into a huge fight with his siblings at the closing saying he should get $20,000 more because he had to handle the sale, and that's what the realtor would have charged. No. Since his dad was close with my broker, we were only charging him 4.5% $5,850 on $130,000. Soup. Did he ever call a lawyer? Yes. About a year later, he called the only lawyer he knew. Another family friend. My broker's brother. The brother talked to my broker, who then talked to me. I gave him the market analysis and the appraisal. We never heard another thing about it. The last one is titled, "Try to Stiff Rent Money Owed? Enjoy having your drug habit exposed and losing your new house." The story: my dad had tried his hand in renting out houses, albeit it's only one house and he had only one renter. He's a soft heart, and couldn't bear to force a family into the streets when rent wasn't paid. The renter was his work colleague, and they were acquainted at best. This man would give every excuse in the book when he couldn't pay his rent, all of them relating to his toddler son. Medical bills for his son, formula and diapers, birthday gifts, so on and so forth. My dad accepted these excuses, allowing his colleague to delay the payment and never once tried to deduct from the deposit. 6 months later, his renter decided to move out. Turns out the jackass bought himself a nice terrace house out in a good suburban area. He knew my dad was a patient and generous man and decided to take advantage of that. My dad, in his words, was upset but more than that, disappointed. He decided that he'll stop renting as he figured he would lose more than what he'll earn. Thus, the house was sold. A few days later, my dad approached his colleague wanting to know why he'd stiffed him of his rent money. This took place in the middle of the office with everyone still at their cubicles or milling around. Dad, colleague. I've heard you've bought a house. If you had money for the house, why couldn't you pay for the rent? Colleague, you know or not, my son keeps falling sick? Ever since I stayed at that house you rent, my son always fever, always coughing. Dad, what has that got to do with me or that house? Colleague, I think I know why. That house is haunted. Got jinn, genie, malevolent or mischievous, and shaitan, devil, demon. You're a new Muslim convert, right? Something must have been upset at you for converting. Because of that, my son is suffering. For context, us Malaysians still hold on to some superstition, though it's more prevalent in the older generations. Be it due to culture or religion, superstitious beliefs are still embedded here. A rented house being haunted usually means little to no potential renters, and a sullied reputation. This ticked my dad off. At this point, everyone had tuned into this drama being unfolded. Raising his voice, he laid down the truth bomb. Dad, I stayed in that house for 2 years with my wife and small children. Nothing happened. You know why your son keeps falling sick? When I went to inspect that house to sell it, the whole place reeked of drugs. Every room in the house smells like marijuana. Your son keeps falling sick is because you smoked drugs around him 24/7. If you ever been slammed by the truth so hard that it left you speechless, that was essentially what happened. Colleague was stunned. Mouth opening and closing like a fish, gasping for breath, before turning around and walking away. My dad, having vented that, left to do his own business. Colleague not denying outright that he didn't do drugs caused the rumor to spread like wildfire, with him ending up needing to do a drug test. Unsurprisingly, he failed that, which led to him being let go. Now you may think that's the end. Drug use in Malaysia is seriously frowned upon here, even if you do it recreationally. Not to mention that other job prospects usually looked into your record and reason for resigning your last job. Having been let go due to failing a drug test is an automatic resume into the bin. No job means no income. No income means colleague can't make the monthly installments for his new house. As my dad found out, it has been auctioned off by colleague's bank to another buyer. As he told me this, my dad never wanted to ruin colleague's life like that. He told me he should have just kept his mouth shut, that him knowing colleague was doing drugs in close proximity to his son was good leverage for colleague to pay his rent. It was a in the heat of the moment action and such. Dad never pressed to get his 6 months of rent money back. Considered it halal, meaning in his eyes, colleague's debt to him was voided. I don't know. Perhaps this was just karma by God for colleague lying to my dad and stiffing him his rent money. Just needed my dad to be a pawn in his plan to punish colleague in this life. The revenge was undeniably unplanned, but goddamn is it pro to me. Thanks for listening.